In the countryside of Leicester in England, there stands an ancient church. And on the walls of this church, there's an inscription that commemorates the man who was responsible for building the church in the first place. It reads as follows: "In the year 1653, when all things sacred were throughout the nation either demolished or profaned, Sir Robert Shirley, Baronet, did found this church, whose singular praise it is to have done the best of things in the worst of times, and hope them in the most calamitous." I couldn't think of a better definition of a godly character than the phrase to do the best of things in the worst of times, and to hope for the best of things in the calamitous times that this person lived. I don't know about you, but I get the feeling we live in calamitous times again. Unless you have totally shut out the world and you live in a bubble, the crisis we live through has probably touched you in some way or another, or will touch you in the near future. Jobs are getting scarce. And unless you have a better money manager than the rest of us, you've probably taken a hit financially. We all have to tighten the belt, so to speak, a little bit more. And the latest poll tell us that people are leaving the church in droves. Religious institutions are in disgrace, ridiculed in the public every single day. These are not the worst of times. Thank God. But to many of us, they sure look like they're coming. Now, more than ever in difficult times, in calamitous times, character counts. Who you are on the inside will either make you or break you when you go through tough times. The truth is that this crisis may go on for several years, the best experts tell us, and truly they really don't know. They're just hoping. And when you go through crisis, when you go through difficult times, what is it that's going to pull you through? What is it that's going to help you stand up from the ashes? Do you have that inner strength within you to help you make it? Do you have the strength of character within you? Doesn't matter how young or how old you are, you can always work on your character. Now here's a big assumption that preachers make, and I make every Sunday that I stand here before you. I make the assumption that you have come here because you really are interested in developing a Christian character. I admit it's a big assumption. Some of you may come here because you love taking the nap during the sermon. But I make that assumption that most of us come to church because we are truly interested in developing a Christ-like character. And beginning with today, I'd like to start a mini-series on character builders. What is it that makes our character? What is it that develops our character? Today I want to take you to a story in the Old Testament, and a man who really was a man of character and helped an entire nation rise up from the ashes because he had what it took in difficult times, in calamitous times. He did the best of things in the worst of times. And he hoped for the best of things in calamitous times, and he helped the whole nation rise up from the ashes. His story is written in the book of Nehemiah. We don't have time to read the whole story, but I encourage you to read it on your own. It's not a big book. We'll just read chapter 1 of the book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah chapter 1. Follow carefully as I read. the words of Nehemiah, son of Hilkiah, in the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, while I was in the citadel of Susa. Hanani, one of my brothers, came from Judah with some other men, and I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that survived the exile, and also about Jerusalem. They said to me, those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire. When I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. Then I said, O Lord, God of heaven, the great and awesome God, who keeps His covenant of love with those who love Him and obey His commands, let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer your servant is praying before you day and night for your servants, the people of Israel. I confess the sins we Israelites, including myself and my father's house, have committed against you. We have acted very wickedly toward you. We have not obeyed the commands, decrees, and laws you gave your servant Moses. Remember the instruction you gave your servant Moses, saying, if you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the nations. But if you return to me and obey my commands, then even if your exiled people are at the farthest horizon, I will gather them from there and bring them to the place I have chosen as a dwelling for my name. They are your servants and your people, whom you redeemed by your great strength and your mighty hand. O Lord, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of this your servant and to the prayer of your servants who delight in revering your name. Give your servant success today by granting him favor in the presence of this man. I was cupbearer to the king. Nehemiah lived in calamitous times. The people of God had been reduced to ashes. All their institutions had been demolished. They had been taken into captivity. Their land emptied of the population. Well, after 75 years of captivity, a small group decided to return to the homeland and try to rebuild it again. But things were not going well. The people that returned were in disgrace and in great difficulty. They came back to ruins, nothing but ruins, ashes. Jerusalem was destroyed and its walls laid in ruins. Now, when Nehemiah learned about this, he knew exactly what he had to do. There are times when we need the Lord to tell us what to do because we don't know what to do. There are times when we need revelation. And then there are times when it is so obvious what needs to be done that the Lord doesn't need to speak to us. And this was such a time. Nehemiah knew exactly what needed to be done. And what needed to be done was the walls of the holy place had to be rebuilt. Nehemiah's heart was broken when he heard that the walls of Jerusalem, the walls of the holy place, lay in ruins, its gates burned to the ground to ashes. He knew what had to be done. And he set out to convince the king whom he served, the king of Persia, to let him go, a pagan king, to let him go and supervise the rebuilding of the walls of Jerusalem. And he stirred the little group that had returned, the exiles. He brought men with him, and he set out to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem.